Today we're going to be showing you how to assemble the Detail K2 utility trailer, part number K2MM-T5X7. This trailer can be delivered to your front door and can be assembled in under an hour. To begin our assembly, I've gone ahead and unpacked all of my hardware. It's a good idea to have a large workspace. The trailer is shipped to you purposely upside down to make installation easier. It's important to know which part of the trailer is the front and which is the back. The front is going to be located where the two pins are here. First thing we want to do is put our leaf springs in place. Now keep in mind, everything we do on this side, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. So our leaf spring here, the hub end is going to face towards the front of our trailer. It's going to line up with the holes here. Now let's move on to our tongue tubes. Before we set those in place, we'll need to undo our pins here in the front. For setting our tongue tubes in place, we'll need to make sure we have the correct one for the correct side. Our jack stands are going to be facing towards the front and facing up. And this is what's going to make our A-frame in front of our trailer. So then I'm going to set it within the mount here. Then I'm going to bring it around. We've got two holes here. The bottom one is going to line up with our leaf spring hole. Then I'm going to take the larger of the 4 hex bolts. We want to make sure that one flat washer is on. I'm going to put it through the bottom hole of my tongue tube. Once it comes out the other end, I'm then going to put it through the hole here, which goes through our leaf spring and out the other side. Here on the outside, we'll then take another flat washer and then our lock nut and just hand tighten that down. Here at the rear of the leaf spring, we're going to take the shorter of the hex bolts. Again, we'll want to make sure there's a flat washer on one end. We'll come from the inside out, put on our flat washer, and then our lock nut. Then we can tighten both of our bolts down. Now you want to be sure not to over tighten because the channel may collapse inward. To tighten both of these bolts down, I'm just using a 19mm wrench and socket. Now you can use power tools, just be sure not to over tighten. For our tongue tube with the wiring harness, let's go ahead and connect it to the center here. And then we can just tuck it underneath to the clips here. With our tongue tubes in place, let's go ahead and reinsert our pins. Now let's install our coupler and our safety chains. So we'll grab our coupler, we'll flip it upside down. It's going to line up with the hole here and here. Now you may have to squeeze the tongue tubes together a little bit. We'll get it in position. I'll then take the hex bolt that was installed on the coupler. It doesn't rightly matter which side you put it through. I'll go through and have it come out the other side. Once that's through, we'll follow it up with a flat washer and then a lock nut. For our second hole, our safety chains are going to be attached to, but from the inside. So we can get our bolt ready. We'll leave one flat washer in place. I'll lift it up, I'll start coming through. I'm going to take one of my safety chains, line it up, and continue pushing it on through to the other side, and then take my other safety chain, get that connected, and then come out the other side. And again, we can just take a flat washer and our lock nut. Now we can tighten up our bolts. Again, I'm just using a 19mm wrench and socket. Again, be sure not to over tighten. Now it's time to lay our axle on our leaf springs. On each side of our axle, we've got a little concave here. That's going to rest on top of our hex head here on each one of our leaf springs. So we'll just need to line that up on both sides. With our axle in place, let's grab our spring plate. The hole here in the center is going to line up with the hex nut on the underside of our leaf spring, like that. With that in place, I'm going to hold it up. I'm going to grab a U-bolt for each side and push that down through the two holes. With those in place, I can now put my flat washer on along with a lock nut and hand tighten those down. Now before we tighten down one side, it's important to have the opposite side loosely installed. For these, I'm just using a 17mm socket, and I'm going to alternate. Once we've got our axle completely secured down, it's time to install the tires. I've gone ahead and put blocks of wood underneath my trailer to make it a little bit easier. So we'll bring the tire in, gonna line it up, and set it in place. Then we can install the lug nuts. We wanna make sure that they are pointing towards the wheel. Now I'm just going to snug these up with a 21mm socket. We can torque them down later at the end of the install. With our tires installed, let's install our light assemblies. We'll start with the side marker lights. We'll take our quick disconnect. We're going to run that through our trailer. Make sure it goes to the other side. Then we'll just line it up with our provided holes and take our included hardware. Now I'm just using a low torque gun. I'll loosely install one side and then get the other side. Now let's connect it here on the inside. It's very easy to do. Just line up the tabbed in, push it in until it snaps into place. In order to install our rear light assemblies, we need to install our housing brackets first. We've got two here, one for the driver and one for the passenger side. The one for the driver side is going to have the bottom cutout for our license plate light. This is our passenger side, so we'll be installing the opposite one. The two holes we're going to be working with on our trailer are right here. We want the open cavity side of our housing to be facing towards the back of our trailer. That way our light can sit inside. Now when we mount it to our trailer, we want to make sure that the hole here is going to be on the bottom of our trailer. This is what allows our wiring to pass through to connect to our quick disconnect. So we'll take our included hardware, line it up with the holes, push it through. Once it's through, I'll take a flat washer and then a lock nut and get that started. And then I'll just pass the next one through. To tighten these down, I'm just using a 10mm socket. Now let's install our rear light. Again, we want to be sure to install the correct one on the correct side. The driver side is going to be the one with the license plate light, so we're going to install the passenger side one. Our side marker light is going to face out, and our wiring is going to pass through the wiring hole. Then we'll just line it up and push it into the back side of the bracket. Then we'll just line up the bolts with the bracket on the back, and then we'll put on our hardware that was with our light, which is going to be a flat washer on each side, and then a nut on each side. And to tighten these down, it's just going to be an 11mm socket. Then we can just make our connection. Our driver's side is going to be installed the same way. We just need to be sure to install our license plate bracket. With the rear lights installed, you'll need to flip the trailer over to finish the rest of the assembly. It's a good idea to have plenty of help to do this, as the trailer at this point weighs about 400 pounds. It's time to install the fenders. The hardware is pre-installed. You'll just need to remove the flat washers and nuts, and then we can set it in place. It's going to rest on the welded-on bracket just behind the tire. With it in place, we'll install our flat washer and our lock nut. To tighten these down, we'll be using a 13mm socket. Let's install our side panels. We need to make sure that the flush side is facing towards the inside of our trailer. I've gone ahead and removed the hardware that came with it so we can set it in place. So we'll just drop it into the center mount, and that's going to line us up with the two outside mounting points. Then we'll grab our hardware. Want to be sure that we've got our flat washer installed. I'm just going to slightly lift up on it to align the holes. And put those both through. Once they're through, we'll put on another flat washer and then our lock nut. Now let's install the rear ones just the same. It's a good idea to install these before you tighten down the front. To get the holes aligned, you may need to pull out slightly on your rear light bracket just for it to sit down flush. To tighten these down, we're just going to use a 13mm socket and wrench. For our front, it's the same size. And finally, it's time to install the gates. The front and rear install the exact same way. Let's go ahead and install the rear one. We'll need to undo our pins. Now when we install the gates, again we want to be sure that the flush portion is sitting towards the inside of the trailer. I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to set it in place within the channels on each side. And then I'm going to set the pins down into the channel here. Now we can install our hardware. We'll put that through with a flat washer on. Once it's through the other side, we'll put a flat washer on, followed by a lock nut. This too is going to be a 13mm socket. Now we can reinstall our pins. With our trailer assembled, we can now torque down our wheels to manufacturer specifications. We want to do it in a star pattern. With those torqued down, we're ready to hook up to our vehicle. It's a good idea to check your trailer wiring before you head out on the road. And that's going to complete our assembly of the Detail K2 utility trailer, part number K2 MMT5X7.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.